urban fantasy for New York House.
My name is Scott James Wagner. I'm an editor, writer, and game designer.
And I'm John Dalmas, and I forget what I am.
Liar.
St. John's confused.
One of the holy ones.
You are revered.
We're going to elect you moderator.
Oh, great.
I decided.
That's awesome.
Yes, it's
So-
an election. I decided.
Yes. Well, then I'm the worst kind of tyrant because I don't really care if we talk about it at all. We're here to talk about creatures in fiction, either scientific ones or fantastic ones.
No.
We're not.
That's the
Is that the next one? I named this room for 4 hours. So we're here to talk about the lifetime of story from inception,
Right, yes.
from inception until
Right,
publication.
right. And they gave us an hour to
An
do
hour,
it.
yeah. Yes, that's totally what we're doing.
If I can have the first 45 minutes.
Absolutely. We're going to go on based on how many books people have published. So I'll see y'all in 2 hours.
27, not including the ecology and management of quaking aspen in the western United States.
Why wouldn't you count that one?
Pardon?
Why wouldn't you count that one? It sounds fascinating.
It's not nearly as interesting to most people.
A lot more work. A lot more work.
Yeah, and I was the lead author of a team. I wrote most of the first 2 drafts, and then we got people who specialize in different parts of that thing to add to it, and so what did they put on the cover? The name of the editors. My role was included in the forwards,
Right on.
and I got paid on a salary.
That's really good. So this topic is so broad, right? We could stab at this for more than an hour or more than a week. So,
University courses.
yeah. Does anyone have specific questions that they'd like to have covered while we're talking? Yes.
Topics stay focused on that individual story.
Shiny things really are bad.
Exactly.
Unless you're writing about shiny things.
I a lot of times write with a notebook beside me, and if I have a really good idea that's not going to fit in this story, I write it down. And sometimes I don't, a lot of those notebooks just go in the garbage. I never look at them again. But it allows me to say, okay, I don't need to remember you anymore because I have you written down, and I have to stay on this character. I think as a beginning author, it's very helpful to write on the small stage. Some people automatically think on the Brandon Sanderson stage, and maybe John probably did. I know John, but most people, your first book, it's much easier if you stay small stage, and that means limit the number of characters you have, keep one protagonist, and follow that protagonist in a close first. Well, third person is better, but like urban fantasy, it's traditional first person. Like gumshoe detective novels, traditional first person, and that's fine. Stay in one person's viewpoint if you can, because every time you stray, it's a lack of self-discipline, and get them through from the beginning to the end. And that's a really good exercise for you in discipline. You've got enough things to learn, trying to learn how to match plot points and make sure all your protagonists are balanced and stuff is a lot to ask in your first book. And you'll find it a much easier way to get from beginning to end. That means if you're doing the multiple viewpoint characters and it's working for you, go for it. That's okay. But most people get lost halfway through the book in the morass of stuff, and they don't know how to end it and stuff. So if you can force yourself to stay in that small stage, that's very useful for your first book.
Another thing that I really recommend, and it doesn't work for everyone, so don't feel you have to do it, is outlining. Get yourself an idea of what you wanted to do when you started the story. And so when you find yourself straying or distracted or looking at shiny things, just pick that thing up, look at it, and say, oh, I wanted to blow the planet up. I haven't done that yet.
Cancer. But outlines, if you're really struggling with that, then outlines are actually the way to go. I can't write with outline if I know where I'm interested in getting there anymore. So
I co-authored a novel that a couple of them actually, but this one I co-authored. I was given a description of what the story, what he had in mind for the story, but he was 56 pages into the first chapter. He realized that something was seriously wrong, and he was my landlord. So I agreed to write 5 sample chapters and work out an outline. And we did that and sold the story on the basis of the outline and the sample chapters. But we didn't follow the outline at all. Because things came up in the writing, and but I always cleared everything from him, and we would discuss these things, and we were very close friends anyway, he and his wife. So it worked out very nicely, but I found that outlining could be very useful, and if you do research, of course, outlining, you might say, is like a research plan. And things come up, things don't work out the way you anticipated. And but mostly, I sat down with an opening notion, or opening scene, or opening image, and wrote from there without any outline or planning. If I got into serious trouble, I would write a skeleton draft. And when the skeleton draft began to be fully fledged draft, then I went back and rewrote the skeleton draft and took it from there.
we
It
also
works, it works.
we also call the skeleton draft the good parts version.
Yeah.
It's all the parts you want to write, and none of the connections, and none of the hard parts.
Not a lot of saids, it's a lot of doings, what goes on in the scene, and you just go to the next one, and next one, next one. Whenever I get stuck, it's immediately what I start doing, and I stop writing dialogue, and I start putting things in parentheses. It's like, goes across the room, fights this, does that, and then 10,000 words later, you're at the end of a book, and you just go back and fix things.
Insert transition here.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for momentum too. Because if you let yourself stall and lose momentum, sometimes it's harder to get going again. Whereas if you just make a note and keep moving,
Yeah.
you're still writing that way.
I have an entire chapter with the parentheses that says Superman 2 style combat. And I go to the next bit. That's going to take me forever to write, so I'm going to get back to that later. In the back.
Alright, so how do you know when you're done and it's time to move on to something else?
When the check cashes.
It's
Oh,
for
damn.
me, it's when the action can end in a happy place and not leave any question marks. So you take all of the threads that you've been weaving through, whether they're character threads or plot threads or just like world building threads, and you bring them to a conclusion and you stop.
What about as far as like editing and rewriting?
You're
and
never done.
Yeah, that's when they pay you.
Yeah, that's what he said.
When's it good enough to?
What he said. He said.
Yeah, when the check cashes, you no longer control that product. It belongs to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So you're very lucky, like Patty was, and 10 years later they let you rewrite the book for a new edition. Then you get paid again. But once it's handed off and you're paid, and you'll see the first one you crack, you go, it got through multiple rounds of editing and copy editing, line editing, and a whole bunch of other people looked at that book and missed the same mistake you missed until it was right there in your hands.
This is a misquote from somebody. It was a work of art is never done. It's just abandoned by its author.
Sad.
Yeah, well, and then you can be Tolkien and rewrite The Lord of the Rings for the rest of your life, changing commas and periods and spelling. Right.
Thanks, don't do that.
All right.
I'm writing a novel not to publish, just to get rid of my excess imagination so I don't have nightmares. But one of the things that I heard was difficult was dialogue. So I open my novel with, I have two main characters. One of my main characters is in a coma.
Probably easy to write for him.
Oh yeah, her. But anyway, the other person comes and visits her and tells stories or reminisces, to keep her grounded in the world while she's in her coma. But that's what I did to avoid the scary dialogue till I actually had characters that had personalities, because I just put one of the characters in a coma.
But that's very interesting procedure. I bet that could be a very interesting story.
Yeah, these women are my contemporaries.
I wouldn't be afraid of dialogue. All you need to remember about dialogue and scenes in general, especially starting out, scenes between two people are easier than scenes between 3 or 4, because you're dealing with a book. You can't. It's not like a camera can pan around all these people that are in the room and remind you that what is the council, the Lord of the Rings council,
Yeah.
that there's actually 30 people sitting here while 2 people are talking. So for books, that's very difficult to do. Dialogue is just two people who want different things, and the tension comes from how much they want different things, and why, and it's if you worry